I'm here with Johnston. He is a Deputy SARS Commissioner. Johnston, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
It was an excellent opening address to the site event. I think all South Africans should hear it, how well you spoke, and how well you've outlined the landscape and were eloquent and honest about the opportunities and the challenges of site and SARS and the South African tax landscape.
Sure.
What do you think is probably of that list of 8 items for you, the ones that is the most pressing?
Look, I think at this point in time, dealing with illicit trade is one of the most pressing issues. Not only because if you look at illicit tobacco and illicit alcohol now, which is now starting to proliferate, you take into account the issues that relate to health on one hand, but also the fiscal drain that those have. So we of the view that those are important. We've learned through research that they proliferate through to other criminal activities. And therefore, when we talk about financial crimes, cross-border crimes, we know that that area has potential to spill over. And therefore, it's very important going forward to curb it. The minister has also challenged us in this regard to say how far we can move, how fast we can move. But I must say that it's also a very challenged terrain. You'd know that recently we were challenged in court when we wanted to put CCTV cameras in some of the production lines. And again, we continue to find ways of ensuring that we've got eyes and ears in the right spaces to be able to account for what goes into the South African economy from a excisable products point of view. And maybe if that's one area, for me, another area that's very important is to ensure that we move the issues of valuation fraud. If you consider that last year we imported around 1.8 trillion in goods into the country, it suggests that it's an area of huge potential. And we have the view that not all those goods were properly classified. We think there is undervaluation that takes place. And we believe that it's important that we heighten our focus on valuation fraud. And that's important. Lastly, we pay 447 billion rands in refunds. We become vulnerable to those that want to extract refunds from the system in an unjust way. So in terms of fighting fiscal leakages, it's very important for us to look into that area.
Do you think there needs to be more regulation in South Africa? I mean, you talk about valuation fraud. You talk about refunds that should not happen. I think you're spot on with those points. But often those things are done by people that's not regulated. Do you foresee a tightening of that landscape, or what is your vision around that?
Look, it's always going to be a combination of tax policy measures as well as using the legislative powers that SARS has. Because I think by and large, we've said that we've got instruments to be able to deal with non-compliance. However, over the last 3-4 years, Commissioner has been quite clear that sometimes it's about the capacity that you don't have. Because ideally, my vision would be to say, do we introduce inspectorates that are able to be visible, to be able to deal with the non-compliance? My view is that perhaps we need to start looking into that space, but also a combination of those resources with technology. We've spoken about such technologies as track and trace, for instance, in the tobacco industry, even in fuel. The current markers that we use for fuel are outdated, and we know that they are being fiddled with by people in trade. And we're working with the likes of DMRE to make sure that we start to introduce much more intelligent markers that can help us to track and trace what is happening in the fuel industry. The consequences, as I said earlier, of not having a sound strategy around curbing illicit trade means that downstream, the automotive sector, for instance, starts to feel the impact of adulterated fuel. We had a meeting with FIASA not so long ago, Fuels Industry Association of South Africa, where some of the farmers were saying we are seeing losses in the farming space because we buy fuel and we've got no way even of testing whether that fuel is adulterated or not. So the ripple effect of the losses in the economy are quite huge. Therefore, for us, we think it's a combination of legislation tightening, and we have. I mean, you'll recall that, as I said in my address, that domestic reverse charge was introduced in the second-hand gold industry to try and curb the claiming of refunds in that environment. And we've seen a lowering of refunds being claimed in that space, but we see movement elsewhere. So again, for us, we think legislation, but also SARS being capacitated to be able to have such things as inspectorates, but to introduce technology that will also move a long way, like our peers globally have, as we benchmark with them to drive the closing of the gap. Because ultimately, it's an illicit, it's an accessible product illicit tax gap that you want to close.
I want to ask, I think in the industry, in the tax industry, you are recognized as probably one of the, if not the SARS official with the widest holistic view about SARS and the experience to back that up. And you talk also about aging SARS workforce, the value of institutional knowledge, importance of new blood. I'm a life tax guy, as you're also a passionate tax guy. I've learned a lot, and thank you for that. Can you please use this forum to just talk a little bit about, if you're a youngster in South Africa, why tax is a good career, why SARS is probably a great place to start your career, what you're looking for, where's the opportunity for the youth?
Look, the old adage goes, if there's two things that are certain in life, it's death and taxes. So we are of the view that as we move forward, taxes are always going to be there, and we believe that it's an important area for youngsters to start to venture into. And therefore, I would invite young people to explore taxation. It's a multifaceted environment. I started off in engineering, and I'm now stuck in tax because I found, having studied in that line of work, to say this is an all-encompassing profession. You get to be able to deal with production, operations. You get to be able to deal with compliance-related issues, investigation issues, auditing. And therefore, it's such a vast wealth, and you are guaranteed longevity in the field. And you certainly not get bored. If I speak to youngsters, I think generally, if you come into the environment, you want to be able to start to appreciate forensic investigative skills, auditing skills. You want to appreciate that we are starting to see IA skills that are emerging, and never did we think before that we would have such skills required in the environment as prompt engineers. As we move the dial in smart and modern SARS, we're seeing a lot of these AI skills being required, process skills being required. But I think generally we continue to be a tax administration, and therefore I argue that at the fundamental of what we do, we can augment with all the other skills, but at the fundamental of what to do is tax. And therefore, tax technical appreciation and understanding is non-negotiable for us. And therefore, we're going to continue to look for skills, young skills to come in that have got tax understanding, tax training, appreciate the moving parts of a tax technical environment. And that for us is non-negotiable. We continue also to balance this with the need to bring in young talent in the customs environment. You cannot find a customs official on the road. So it's important to be able to build your own timber in that regard. So we're driving a cadet program where we're bringing in young graduates across audit, investigations, finance, because we believe that modernizing our customs environment is going to require a different breed of a customs official. or customs officer. So we are driving a cadet program in that environment, and opportunities from time to time will arise for young people to raise their hands to say, we want to join SARS in that regard. Equally, on the excise environment, we want to bring auditors, but we want to bring them with an appreciation of process. As we spoke about the value chain and the understanding of the value chain, being able to understand product from source to final product that is produced in any given environment, whether it's fuel, whether it's alcohol, whether it's tobacco, whether it's fruit juice for sugary beverages taxes. We need people to be able to understand that environment, but again, come from a strong leaning towards tax, and that's important for us.
I just want to say thank you for everything you do for SARS and for South African tax. Thank you for brilliant keynote. I think it was absolutely excellently delivered.
Thank you.
And yeah, just thank you for the contribution you make to the South African tax community. It's widely recognized. I know you're not always the front cry in the press, but I think we all know that you're probably the guy that does most of the heavy lifting with obviously colleagues and part of a team at SARS. So thank you so much.
No, look, thank you. I think a great boss that is leading us in Professor Edward Kisvetter, and we are able to achieve what we achieve through his visionary leadership. But I also would like to thank SITE, because you see, it's important for organizations such as SITE to be active in the ecosystem, to help us drive the narrative, to also help us to reflect in the mirror and look at ourselves from the eyes of the practitioners and see the blemishes that we may need to fix from time to time. So we're really appreciative of SITE as an organization.
Thank you. I think we've got it's a very good symbiotic relationship between SITE and SARS and mutual respect. And of course, SITE got its tax accounting designation this year, which I think will ensure that our members are also even kept to a higher level and standard. And thank you for your support on all of that.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.